Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, Tacitus your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures. Listen to this as you're driving along in your car or your truck live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the European elections that have just finished. This is for the European Union, and there's been a lot of drama and a lot of hysterical media coverage, and the neo-Nazis, Hitler has taken over, and I mean, insane, idiot stuff that only insane mad people would push. But the mainstream media, of course, runs with these talking points. That's the talking points. That's the script they've been given, and that's what they run with. And just looking at the media sort of aftermath, and actually in the build up to the election and in the aftermath, it takes usually whenever you're talking about the anti-globalist parties or people that question globalization, I've noticed it takes less than 20 seconds, usually between 15 and 20 seconds, before Hitler, fascist, Nazi, neo-Nazi is mentioned. Far right gets a lot of gigs, but typically Hitler's going to get a gig before 20 seconds has passed. So, but with the hysteria around the European Union elections, typically Nazi gets a gig within 10 seconds. And you can look at numerous interviews and you get the same thing. So clearly they're operating off a centrally scripted set of talking points. And if it's that totally controlled propaganda, then you can't believe it. It's simply not true. So going through the results, I just wanted to, and I've mentioned it in the information there, in the description to the video, is the breakdown of the seats. But reality, not much has changed. The parties, political parties that oppose globalisation or question it, they've marginally improved their position, but not much. They're nowhere near forming a majority. So they've gone from, depending on how you want to crunch the numbers, they've gone from being roughly 20% of the total. This is of 720 deputies in the European Parliament. They've gone from a total of around 20% to approximately 25%. So that's it. Now that you'd say, given the severe angst around mass migration all across Europe, and that it's cited as the number one issue for voters in places like France and Germany and Sweden and elsewhere, that somehow hardly any change in the makeup of the European Parliament took place. So you have to look at that very suspiciously, I would think. If it's the number one issue in so many places, how come there wasn't a vast, a huge shake-up in the makeup of the deputies? But the reality is that those parties that are sympathetic to globalisation have fallen back slightly, and part of, and there's a bit of a range too in the issues that the pro-globalisation parties also include, say, the Greens, who are very big on the Green New Deal. So they may not necessarily be big on mass migration, but they're very much into the Green New Deal, LGBTQ stuff. Other parties and deputies in there may be very much pro mass migration, but they don't care so much about LGBTQ. And so you get a bit of a mix in there. But the parties that are either firmly on board with some fundamental aspect of globalisation, that is mass migration, LGBTQ, social disruption using LGBTQ issue, and the Green New Deal, then you're looking at around, give or take, 40% or so you'd put in the pro-globalisation camp. You'd be looking at 20% order in the sympathetic to globalisation. There are some things that they may question, but they're not pushing back against the globalisation agenda. They're not pushing back against mass migration. They're not pushing back against the Green New Deal. They're not pushing back against the ideological fanaticism of LGBTQ being pushed in kindergartens and things like that. So, and nor are they against the fabric of Western civilization, as in, the rule of law, due legal process, guilty, till innocent till proven guilty, innocent till proven guilty, things like that. Or even looking at the Napoleonic Code that is generically referred to in say, France, where the burden of proof rests heavily with the state before they supposedly at least commence legal proceedings against a citizen. So nonetheless, nothing really much has changed. That approximate mix of those who are sympathetic to those who are pro-globalisation and those are somewhat sympathetic to it, the numbers haven't really changed. They've dropped back a little bit, but in no way is the majority affected. And again, those who oppose globalisation have marginally improved their position. There's a sort of another group, if you like, that they don't necessarily oppose globalisation. They just think it's being implemented badly, and that it should be, some fine tuning and technical adjustment will put in place. Then it would be all right. Now that doesn't mean that they're not, the pro-globalists don't like that, because if you like, the technicians that want to fine-tune globalisation want to do things like restrict immigration to skilled migration, and this is anathema. This is Nazi talk for as far as the globalists are concerned. So in effect, these people who want to fine-tune globalisation, they're seen as part of the far right anyway. Now, this condemnation of the far right, or the assertion of the far right, let alone the condemnation of it, is crazy. Even journalists or commentators I would consider somewhat moderate even go to the far right fascists, neo-Nazis, and so on. And now the interviewers who are all pro-globalist interviewers, they're not independent journalists, not by far. I don't know. I mean, they don't challenge it because they're propagandists first, and if they're even journalists at all. But I'm wanting someone to anyone, just an interviewer, to go, okay, well, you've said that they're neo-Nazis there. What have they done, said, or what are their policies that say they're neo-Nazi? I'd like to know. You've said neo-Nazi. You've given them that label. Prove it to me. But no one does that. They're just allowed to go straight through unchallenged. Whereas if someone says that, well, there's illegal migrants consume a vast amount of social services, the journalist, again, an activist for the globalist cause, will jump into action. Studies have shown that only Nazis say that. Well, no. You can't have it both ways. You're only going to argue one side of it. Then you're not a journalist or a news outfit. You're just a propaganda outfit, which, of course, they nearly all are. You struggle to find any coverage which you'd regard as independent or balanced. I mean any coverage. I was just looking at a channel earlier on today, which is, I'd say, centre right, and they typically will ask some wider, ideological questions, if you will, and I've listened to them. I think they're not too bad, but they get someone on just earlier today, and who insists that the AfD in Germany are far right neo-Nazis. No, they're not. And yet the interviewer doesn't even say a word, nothing, not even a question or a follow-up on that neo-Nazi comment is allowed to just go straight through, which was rather irritating. And ask the questions. You're a fucking journalist, or you purport to be. But look, the pro-globalist media outlets are super cashed up. Money pours into their coffers from the pro-globalist outfits, whereas any of those who may ask questions are written off as Nazi and fascist and so on. At no stage has anyone been able to, certainly that I've seen or heard, has been able to say, okay, they're neo-Nazi, they're fascist, they're this, they're that. Now, there's a game they play of association. So there was, say, one political party about 20 years ago, one member of that political party, which is now deemed as far-right Nazi, one member of that political party questioned the number of deaths that had occurred in 1940s Central Europe, saying were they in fact as many as was alleged, and produced some numbers saying, well, look, it would have been impossible for this many to have been exterminated in those places, and therefore we're looking at a different number, certainly nowhere near the number that's alleged. And that's what the person said. And they backed it up with sort of very factual information. But because the claim has gone to the annals of ideological myth and so on, then it can't be questioned. In fact, it can be considered a crime in some places to even question it, let alone refute it or deny it. So on the basis of this, then that becomes this person has denied this, which is and they therefore must have 1,000 swastikas, and so it's very much an inference-based thing. And you say, well, hold on, stop. That was one person 20 years ago who simply asked a question. Why does that mean that they're all Hitler lovers today? And they couldn't answer the question. So you have to hold these people to account. Now, if it's true that they've got 1,000 swastikas in their land room, fine. Okay, show me this evidence, and then we can go from there. But that doesn't happen. So there's been no far right. I mean, the claim is that the people who would question oppose globalisation, their position has not deteriorated and somewhat improved. Depending on who's talking about it, there's a claim that some are claiming that the far right came close to winning, but we stopped them. We stopped those fucking Hitler-loving Nazis. That's bullshit. That is absolute and total bullshit. That nonsense from Ursula von der Leyen, who's getting there, pretending to celebrate that we won, and everything. It's all nonsense. So, there was no chance that not even a remote chance that those that oppose globalisation would come out with a majority, and the fear campaigns they were running and the media were running and so on were all out of all proportion to any known reality. So just summing up on the European Union scene, those that are pro-globalisation or sympathetic towards it are in certainly control close to 2/3 of the, certainly more than half, but close to 2/3 of the deputies, the electoral seats in the European Parliament, and then the rest that are vary from, again, thinking technical adjustments can fix it, to those that oppose it. Now, given the very determined effort that all the Europeans, the globalist controlled governments have made to prevent or emasculate any vote that's not pro-globalisation, then you can see this result's probably more consistent with that than anything else. This idea that the march of the far right and Hitler and Nazis, that's nonsense, utter nonsense. I'll add another couple of points here in terms of the European Parliament. When you listen to the parliamentarians, certainly the ones that speak, they're very big on diversity, equity, inclusion in this parliament. But they, the amount of hysterical pro-globalist, the amount of people in there who are rabid haters of white society and white culture, that's not right. Why would any society vote in and give a seat in parliament to people that hate the country that they're supposed to be representing? That's insanity, isn't it? But you listen to these politicians; they're very, very unimpressive people. You're hard pushed to find any. The pro-globalists are pretty much universally unimpressive. They all have the same set of talking points. They all talk the same ideological gibberish. They don't have any serious questions. They have no serious policies. They have no serious prescriptions. It's prescriptions, a policy prescription. It's all talking points that's written out for them. So they're all a bunch of brain dead goon stooge hacks, just there to vote as they're told. Now, the people who oppose globalisation are there because they have questions. They have issues to talk about. They have policy prescriptions. So by definition, they've had to do more policy heavy lifting, and therefore they're on balance far more impressive than the others are, than the pro-globalists are. Again, the pro-globalists are a bunch of brain dead hack morons reading scripts, whereas the other side are asking serious questions. And it's always a case in a democracy, I think, who will ask the questions. It's always a case in democracy. If you don't have that, then you don't have a democracy, or not a functioning one. Now, I've spent a bit of time in Brussels and around the European Union haunts, and those people know how to party, and they've got very generous expense accounts and so on. So a lot of young people too, a lot of flunkies there. They're billed as political advisors, but they're actually just kids who are studying gender studies in university or something. But certainly when I've been there, and the company books me into a sort of a downtown hotel and everything, and so I go. I've been there on a number of nights and weekends, and just nearby there was a pretty sort of hot and happening sort of restaurant strip that's not far from the European Parliament, and so I thought I'd wander down there one evening, and there was a place that was certainly heaving and buzzing and so on, and so I went in, and there was this huge table. Must have been, I don't know, 50 people, if somewhere around that at this table, and they were some gang from the European Union Parliament thing. And they were a bunch of political advisors, supposed political advisors, and whatnot. And now I there's a lot of people from Northern Europe there. I don't speak Swedish or anything. Their English was quite good. There are other people from other places, and hangers-on, and all sorts of folks that are just riding off the coattails of the taxpayer-funded gravy train. And it's quite a buzz actually in a lot of ways. They were younger. I was only a few years older than them. Like I would have been late 20s, mid to late 20s, and they'd have been, this is the first time that I encountered them, and they'd have been early to mid 20s. So we were kind of in that same general age group. And they're all there. Everybody was somebody's relative, or everybody was somebody's mistress. There was nobody there. This is at the European Parliament, and these are the advisors, and again the hangers-on, the supposed speechwriters and policy developers and so on. None of them were there on any form of merit, certainly that I could discern. And again, the relatives and so on. And it's part of this sort of gravy train where because the people being put into the Parliament are themselves stooges. Maybe they're radical leftist college academics or something like that they've just been gifted this, and again their job is to push propaganda and to read off the script and so on, and these are the pro-global. I didn't quite discern it at the time. My knowledge of or my understanding, I hadn't yet connected this first time. I hadn't yet connected the dots about what was going on. I was certainly suspecting it and suspicious of it, but was more looking at the American scene than the European scene at this time. And so, at the tables, all the bars, young people exchanging stories, and if anybody couldn't speak, there were other people who couldn't understand English, but there's somebody who would interpret for them. If somebody was talking in, I don't know, fucking Polish or something, then other people would interpret for that person. And it was quite, there was sort of an exciting buzz about it. And I guess reflecting my age and perhaps idealism at the time. But the thing that struck me, as a young guy, and bear in mind, I'm working in a private company, and so I have to deliver results and get paid and rewarded on results, lose my job if I don't do it, that type of thing. None of these people did. None of them had any performance-based requirement. None of them were there on merit. None of them would keep their jobs on any form of productive merit. They weren't there to build anything. They were there to bring about social change, and social change in a way that would suit and would enable the globalist project. And again, I hadn't quite connected the dots then, but that sort of did stick out. So aren't you meant to be policy developing? Aren't you meant to be doing the heavy lifting, making people's lives better, improving and they, no. We're here to create social change. And even then there was talk about, much more veiled than it is today, but this idea, if we don't do this, then the Nazis will come back. And They will. I mean, wow. I mean, how do you know that? And so I was rather, but I was unimpressed with, if you were to do like an IQ test, you wouldn't have come across, you wouldn't have encountered many high IQs, if any at all. There were some hot chicks there who were clearly the mistresses of there were a couple of lesbian girls there who were the mistresses of lesbian deputies and so on. So you had all that there, but nobody was there in any form of merit. And if you look at the globalist politicians in the European Union, none of them are there in any form of productive merit. Their job is just to enable and further the globalist project and nothing more, and sign off and tick the boxes and so on. So it was actually quite a sorry state, but another thing got me was the expense accounts these people had. They were remarkably well paid. They were better paid than they could have had in any job, back in their own country. And I was pretty well paid at the time, a VP level type salary. So I was doing pretty good. I can't complain about the salary I was getting back then, but they fucking worked me hard though. But these people had sort of no work to do. They just partied and sort of hung around and just socialized and spoke about how they were going to defeat the Nazis and everything. But there was no job that they actually had that you could identify. Like one of them, I think one of them now, it was, I think she was a Swedish girl or something. And she was smiling at me and telling me that her job was to if the member of Parliament, European Parliament, needed her advice on something, then she was there to give it, and she sort of just stood by there. But what advice could she give? She was far from being a genius, and as far as I could tell, she knew nothing. So what could she advise on? And so I asked that question, well, what exactly do you advise on? Just out of academic interest. And I remember the smile she gave me. You silly little man. Don't you understand? This whole thing is just a taxpayer-funded quango gravy train. No one's meant to do anything. No one's meant to do any work. No one's meant to do. We say that we're advisors, but we don't advise on anything, and nor can we. And we don't care that we can't. We're just there to suck up the taxpayer money and live indulgently, a bit like the court at Versailles. And so this is what we're doing. And my not uncomprehending, but my inability to grasp the scale of this largesse and madness, she thought was rather humorous. Don't you understand anything, you silly little man? That sort of stuff. We're not meant to be doing any work here. We're just meant to be spending the taxpayers' money and having a good time doing it. And by the way, these people did know how to party. They knew every nightclub and every, these were professional party goers, and they were doing this all on the European taxpayers' dime, for goodness sakes. You've been attached to us today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.